In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Hail Mary, full of
Full
grace,
of
the
grace,
Lord
the
is
Lord
with
is with
thee.
thee.
Blessed art
Blessed
thou
art
among
thou
women,
amongst women,
and blessed is
blessed
the
is
fruit
the
of thy
fruit of
womb,
thy womb,
Jesus.
Jesus.
Holy
Holy
Mary,
Mary,
Mother of God, pray for us
pray for us
sinners,
sinners,
now
now
and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady, Queen of Peace, pray for us. Saint Joseph, patron of workers, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, we're delighted to have in this program, in our series on Catholic social teaching, Neal Flesher, who is going to be speaking about Catholic social teaching about economics, but also how it relates to the current economic system in the United States. So, welcome, Neal. And would you say a few words about yourself and how you got interested in this project?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I mean, my background. I grew up and in Kansas. I enlisted in the Army as a means to pay for college because we're all told you have to go to college if you want to have a good life. So that was kind of my way of paying for it. But then college kind of fell into my lap. I got the opportunity to go to West Point, and I took that up. I studied philosophy at the military academy. Um, I did pretty well, and I was able to select aviation as my branch. So I went to flight school and I learned to fly Apaches. Um, I did
Mhm.
my commissioned officer time, and when I got out, I went and used that GI Bill that I originally had planned to use for undergrad. I used it for my graduate degree. I went to Holy Apostles to get my master's in philosophy, studying with a concentration in ethics, um, and then basically just I don't know when it was that idea of like, well, what are you going to do with it? And it's like I acquired these skills, acquired these philosophical tools, and I wanted to use them to understand the world so I could better navigate through and lead my family, to prosperity and to give them a good life. And basically, as I started looking around, I realized I didn't understand money. I didn't understand what our monetary system was. It was just something I never thought about. So I took my newly acquired philosophical sword and I started whacking at the bushes of the monetary system. And basically, as I started examining the mechanics of our monetary system, uh, I then realized the ethical implications um, of what our system meant, and I don't know. It just was it. I was enlightened, and it just felt called to start running in this direction, and that this is a message that people need to understand. Because if I didn't understand it, I'm sure lots of people don't, and
Mhm.
I don't know. That's kind of what got me to write this book. My book is to help the normal person understand our monetary system and arm them with the moral language to understand what is happening. Like we look out at the economic realities of our day. Any charter graph, and it's kind of hard to understand, and something feels really off, something feels oppressive and abusive, and we look at all our social issues of the day, and it's kind of like, well, what unifies them all? And my ultimate conclusion is that it starts with this immoral money. The immoral money is what funds and pushes all these other socially immoral, I don't know, the denigration or the degradation of our social fabric, I think, is because of an immoral money. But
Very good, very good. Well, our Lord talked about uh, people involved in economics and lending, and he used this in some of his parables. And the church has developed a social doctrine which involves economics. Though the church is not tied to any particular economic system, but has moral principles that govern our view of money. And so the church upholds the right to private property, but this is balanced by the universal destination of the goods of the earth. In other words, the goods of the earth are not for just an elite or the money class or the wealthy, but they're meant to be shared. And then also in every aspect of Catholic social doctrine, human dignity and equality before God come into play. So, in other words, we should not look upon people of a certain ethnic group or race as inferior. No, we're all equal before God. Of course, we have different talents and gifts and so on that need to be taken into account, but there's fundamental human dignity and equality. Do you believe, because you're mostly familiar with the economic system in the US, correct? Do you believe that the economic system in the US today respects these fundamental Catholic moral principles?
No, I don't at all. And the reason for that is because when you examine the mechanics, the operational mechanics of central banking and the implications of a fiat debt-based money, it relies upon debasement and usury. Those are like that's the oil and the fuel that drives this engine. And I mean, those debasement and usury are just completely antithetical to the Catholic conception of human dignity and justice. So, it's like that was the big thing. Like, I can't justify debasement. I can't justify usury. So then, why am I standing for this monetary system? Like it. That's kind of the crossroads I came to, was like, this is evil, and I have to say something about it, because our reaction to our monetary system is like it's normal and that it's fine and that it doesn't really matter, but it actually does.
Yes, well, you've spoken about usury. Of course, that's condemned in the Bible. Uh, but then there was the question of interpreting that. And so some thought that for the people of Israel, that meant charging interest to your fellow countrymen. And so then there was this recognition that you could possibly lend money at an interest to the Gentiles. And then this played into the economic system in the Middle Ages, as you know, and it was even addressed at the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215, the abuses of usury and money lending. To some extent, it was also colored by anti-Semitism. I have to be honest about this, that the Jews were considered to be the money lenders. And then gradually the church, when the economic system began to change in the 18th century, there were modifications made under Pope Benedict XIV. And then gradually today, we would understand usury is still condemned, but it would be understood as charging interest beyond a just title, so justice becomes the determining factor. So I'm just wondering, how would you understand usury today? And do you think that there is usurious practices in the U.S. economic system?
Yeah. So the principle that I got, that I think is underneath all that, that they talked about in the Fifth Lateran Council, the quote here is, the acquiring of gain or profit without work, any expense or risk. So to me, that stood out as the principle that severs natural law. Like, the idea of having, when you're lending, to be in accordance or in alignment with natural law, you have to be doing some work as the lender, meaning you have to be bearing some risk of loss. You have, because that mitigating risk is real work, and that's the kind of thing that grounds lending. Like, you can talk about interest rates and stuff after that, but like, if you don't have that fundamental principle of like the lender's contributing work, bearing risk in the act of lending, that's usurious. So this is what's really interesting with our monetary system. When you look at how does what is the origin of a dollar? How does a dollar come into existence? Well, it is lent from nothing. It comes as a debt at interest. So there's a zero cost to creating the dollar. The central banks bear no risk. There's no word like they're lending nothing at interest. Every dollar, that's the act that brings a dollar into the economy. And it's something that seems ridiculous. Like it was really hard. That was something that appeared to shocking to me at first when I was doing my research, but there's no way around it. Like that's the act that makes all the money, all the dollars. And we say, is it just the US? It's like, no, it's the whole world, because the dollar is the global reserve currency. So it pulls everything together. But every dollar comes into existence through usury. So even beyond the debasement aspect of it, like those are like the kind of the two sides of this, what I call an economic enslavement. But there's no way around that, so usury, to get it even, like it's just like what work is being done, what risk is being burdened, like shouldered, and the answer is none. They just click a button and it makes everything fine, except it abuses all the normal people. So I don't know if that helps. Like it's
No,
the underlying principles that don't move, and that's what I keyed in on.
very good. And thank you for the reference to the Fifth Lateran Council, early 16th century, because it's good to have a historical perspective on how the church's teaching evolved, but always that condemnation of exploiting people through lending interest beyond what would be reasonable or just. Now, we would like to welcome Michael Vacca into our conversation. He's a lawyer, but also with a background in theology also through Holy Apostles College and Seminary. And Michael, would you like to weigh in with any follow-up questions? We've been talking about Catholic social teaching, and now we've gotten involved in the question of usury. Do you have any follow-up questions on this?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Neal, for joining us, and sorry to be late. What you were just saying was really intriguing about, so what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that because they create the dollar without risk, in other words, because the normal rules don't apply, the normal economic rules that would preclude usury don't apply. Therefore, the entire economic system is kind of tainted. Is that kind of the idea? Because there's not a the normal burden that is placed upon the lender of risk isn't there. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, as I was trying to apply these principles and justify the system, like my whole purpose was like, how do I justify this? I need to make the case. How do I steel man our monetary system? And like I could not get around the usury of like lending the dollars come into creation through being lent at interest for no cost. And it's like that.
Right.
I just that's really a powerful like fulcrum because if it's true, then you're like, yeah, that is the entire monetary system. We're not talking about loan sharks or like business loans or we're not arguing particulars. It's just a principle, and it doesn't move.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Neal. Now, you mentioned economic slavery. And that's the title of your book. What's the full title of your book, if you might mention it?
Yeah, so the book's titled "Modern Chains: The Invisible Shackles of Economic Slavery."
Okay, very good. Could you elaborate on why you use the word slavery? Because that's a very strong and powerful word.
It is, and I just would like to say, like, I had an initial when I was trying to put these things together, like there's a moral weight to that word because it just invokes these visceral images of like human bondage and suffering and just horrible abuses, and that doesn't look like what it is today. But you trying to come up with the definition. All right, so what is slavery? Well, it's a moral crime. right? How do we identify a moral crime? Well, Aquinas talks about it's the object. The thing that's being taken is how we define and identify moral crimes. So, murder, I'm unjustly taking your life, right? If I'm stealing, I'm unjustly taking your property. Okay. Well, it's like, well, what's slavery? Slavery isn't, it's like a weird thing. It's like, we strip away all the accidents, right? Like Aquinas, Aristotle, like how do we define something? Well, we're trying to get its essence. So we're stripping away all the accidents, all the things that could be more or less or that don't matter. I could be an inch taller, I could be an inch shorter. My height is not the thing that defines me. I could shave off my goatee, like that doesn't define me. So it's like when we do that with historical chattel slavery, you get a function. You get this function of extracting productive energy, the fruit of another's labor. You're extracting that for your own benefit, and there's force, there's coercion involved in this. So it's like, okay, so looking at the particular of historical slavery and stripping it of all the accidents, I got the definition of the coercive extraction of one's productive energy. Okay, so, well, with that definition of slavery, that this function, it's not the instrument. Like historical slavery was physical domination. They achieved that end. They achieved that function with physical domination. It's like, well, today our economic system, when you look at what happens when they debase the money, when they print money, what does that do mechanically, technically? Well, it's extracting the productive value from every dollar. All right. So accidents aside, both historical slavery and our modern day monetary system are both extracting the productive value of others coercively. So it's like that's slavery. That is formal slavery. Before they used physical domination. Today they just use monetary manipulation. Both are force. Both are equally coercive. They have different outcomes and it looks completely different, but it's the same end. It's the same function. And that's I understand the temptation to want to distance ourselves from that word slavery because it's like, oh, it's just hyperbolic, it's clickbait. It's just like, no, this is a formal definition and we need to name it for what it is, because if my next door neighbor had slaves, that would elicit, I would recognize that as evil and I would do something about it. I wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, it's fine that he has some slaves. But I go about my daily life transacting, living in this monetary system as if nothing happens, as if it's fine. And it's not. Like, it's the exact same, except it's the worst thing is, like, at least with physical domination, there's kind of like this natural limit, I'm only so powerful physically. I can, like, there's a huge cost to trying to scale this up. Like, you have 10 slaves, 100 slaves, 1,000 slaves. Like, you need a huge infrastructure to maintain that. It's like, well, the monetary system sets up an infrastructure that makes the slavery universally scalable. Like, it's probably the most insidious and powerful instruments of enslavement you could ever possibly even devise. Like, I think it does approach the theoretical max of what you could do, because every single dollar holder is a slave. Like, when you understand I had no idea how our monetary system worked, and it just was so shocking to me to understand the mechanics. But when you go and you sign your car loan, when you sign your mortgage, like, it's not just them printing $6 trillion of COVID money or printing $8 trillion to go fight the forever wars, in the Middle East. That's the debasement. It's like every time you sign that loan, more money is being created from nothing. Like, it's a trickle effect too in all of our interactions. And it's just like, I don't know. It's a very shocking thing, but it's true. And I wrote the book just to, like, this is a thing that we need to talk about and we need to call it what it is so we can actually do something about it. Because like, as a father, like, I'm thinking about my children. Like, it's one thing to, like, abuse me. Like, okay, I'm an economic slave. That's fine. But it's another thing for me to just pass my chains to my children. Like, I'm not going to stand for that. Like, that's not going to happen. This is my fight because I want to pass a world on to my kids where they're not they don't have to deal with fiat. They don't have to deal with central banking. Like, that's my cause now. That's my purpose in life. Sorry.
No. Thank
So,
you. Now,
Yeah.
Michael, you follow up, please.
yeah. So Neal, question for you. What is what if the central bank and the production of the U.S. dollar, which is by default the reserve currency of the world, because it's all based on the dollar. If that is a fundamentally flawed system that amounts to usury and slavery of the human person, what is the alternative to that? What would you propose as the alternative economic system that is more in accordance with the dignity of a human person that would not amount to usury?
Yeah, so when you look at the history of our monetary system, the founding fathers were very, very much so against the central bank. Like, there huge fights about, oh, we need a central bank, oh, we don't. And
Right.
the idea, the terms is really, it's like the paper money. Like, you have to, you know, money and value are two things. They're two concepts that we talk about. And we kind of like blob them together, but they're actually distinct things. And it's like, and this is what I took from Aristotle and Aquinas when I did my research. What is money? That question. And it's like, when you understand that money is this object, this token of, Aristotle calls it a token of need. But it's an object that encapsulates real value. So with your life, you work, you exert energy to move things towards ends, to achieve, like, to produce things. Like, we actually create value with our life. Like, you get up in the morning and you do stuff that creates value. And money is this, like, it's a social language, like, at scale of how we communicate value and how we interchange and like how we exchange needs, how we actualize our needs. Like, that's its function, is what it does. It forms the bonds of how we relate to each other socially. So when you separate, okay, we have this object, and we can have any object. Like, you can put value into lots of different things, but understanding that the value is real and it's put into an object, like, that's really important. And that's why, there's this natural hierarchy of kind of monetary objects, because not all objects perform the same. They have different material characteristics. So it's like, it's not an accident that gold was money for 5,000, 10,000 years or whatever. Like, throughout history, people have used lots of different monetary objects, and gold rose to the top. But the problem with gold, given its physical properties, is when you try to like, it's perfect for if, like, you and I are trying to exchange something, and I give you some gold and you give me a product or a service or something. Like, it works perfectly, like, person to person. But when you scale this up, and at this global level, its heft, the amount of security that it takes, like, it centralizes the monetary system. There's this natural gravity with gold that pulls everything together, and the only way that you can scale that is with trust, right? So that's how, and that's the window that allows corruption into the system, right? When the gold in the vault doesn't match the paper IOU for the gold, like, that's when we have a problem. So we had the Federal Reserve comes in 1913, and we don't get fiat until 71. It's like, well, why? We can't just go back to gold, because gold doesn't scale. Like, the reason we have 71 is basically the IOUs didn't match the actual gold, and we are getting called on it. So instead of letting it, be known that it's just, we were fraudulent, like, we made more paper than we had gold, we flipped the table. We just flipped the table, and we said, we're not even going to pretend anymore. It's just all fiat, and you're going to do this, or else, like, that's what we played our global hegemon card. Like the entire world and the American people too went along with it because they didn't want to stand up and say like, no, wait a second. We went on this road where we said the dollar was backed by gold, and now you're just saying it doesn't even matter, and we're just making it up. Like we left the reservation and we went along with it, and I'm being asked to go along with it too today, and knowing what I know and how it's evil, like I'm not going to do it. Like I'm not going to do that. So to answer your question, so what's the alternative? If gold is what brought us to here, and it failed globally because we can't scale it, it's like, well, what do we do? And 20 years ago, I don't know if there was I don't know what else we could have done. But it's from this kind of it's from this point that where I understood the mechanics of the monetary system and the moral implications of it at a metaphysically deep bedrock level, that I came to Bitcoin. So when I looked at Bitcoin, I recognized it instantly as the solution to that problem. It solved for trust. So it's a sound money that it's backed by energy, by work. It's grounded in natural law. It's completely peer-to-peer, egalitarian. Like it solves all the moral and ethical problems that concerned me, and that's why I think it's like now we have a tool. We have a monetary object. When you so Bitcoin as this monetary object with material potencies and characteristics. I mean, it's just as physical as a bar of gold. Those particles, those electrons, are just as physical as any other object. So it's like just because it's not tangible that I can grab it doesn't mean it's not physical. But when I looked at it, it's like, okay, this is a monetary object that solves all the trust issues, that solves all the moral. It's morally ethical, and I can justify it. That's the solution. I would say it's at least a solution. Like, could there be something better, in the future? I mean, I'll leave that up to, like, sure, theoretically it's possible.
So,
excuse me, Neal, could you explain for the audience what you mean by a Bitcoin? I've heard the term.
I was going to say,
Some people are not familiar with it.
yeah.
Okay. So Bitcoin is, you could think of it as so it's a decentralized monetary network. It's a ledger, so this goes back to like the Sumerian clay tablets, just tallies. It's an immutable ledger that just says this account has this much, this address has this much, and they send tallies back and forth to addresses. So basically a user holds a private key. It's like the passcode or whatever to an address that lets Bitcoin be sent out. So it just says whoever holds that key, like that's what the Bitcoin, like you don't possess the Bitcoin because you're not the ledger, but what you possess as an individual is the key. That's the bearer asset. That's the bearer part of a Bitcoin. But if you just think of Bitcoin is a monetary object, it's a digital, like you don't have to secure it. Like I don't have a ton of gold in my backyard that I'm having to protect. And if I want to transfer it, I don't have to go hire a whole army to ship it across the ocean, and it's just like you just send it, you yourself as an individual. Any person can just run a node, which is like a part of the network. Sorry, I'm trying not to get the super technicals. You can go. The important thing is like it's just this immutable ledger that's grounded in natural law, and it's. I'm not going to. It's not perfectly moral in the sense that someone couldn't use it to do something bad, but it's perfectly moral in the sense that it cannot be debased. It cannot be. No one can coerce you to send it to anybody. The only way that that an economic transaction, value for value, happens is somebody has to persuade me with the, like, they have to offer me something. Hey, I will give you this to be, and you send me that Bitcoin. And if both parties don't consent and say, yeah, this is a transaction that we want to make, that no one can take that Bitcoin from you. No one can steal it. No one can debase it. So it's like going back to that idea that, so what happens with debasement when they print the money? So we have this monetary object, which is this dollar, okay? And we treat them fungible. We call them fungible. So every dollar spins just like any other dollar. But when they print money from nothing, there's a lag, there's a delay from the time it's created to when it's injected into the economy. Like not everybody, prices, the market hasn't adjusted to the expanded monetary supply. So if you think that every dollar has the same amount of value in it, when they print money, those monetary objects are empty. There's no actual value in them. So when they're put into, but they're passed off, it's like a fraud. They're passed off as if they're real dollars that people worked hard for. That's what actually extracts the money, or not the money. It extracts the value from all the dollars that were in existence, and it fills up those newly created dollars. So it's like this, like they call it like the Cantillon effect. It's like those closest to the money printer have the best benefit because they get to spend dollars at a price, like they're valued without the market taking into account the inflation, if that makes sense. So when the government spends money, it's spending money and the market hasn't adjusted to those new dollars coming into it yet. And by the time it makes it to you and I, it takes about 18 total months for this lag to catch up. Those new dollars have extracted the value out of every other existing dollar and has just created this equilibrium. So it's like, that's the mechanic for what, like, real value is being extracted coercively from every dollar anybody holds.
So Neal, question on that, and is it okay, Dr. Fastiggi, if I?
No, go ahead.
So question on that then is suppose somebody has Bitcoin, and like you said, it could be abused, but it doesn't have the same problems as like a central bank would. So suppose somebody has Bitcoin and they want to go to the store, they want to go to the grocery store and they want to purchase groceries. As far as I know, most grocery stores don't accept Bitcoin. So is it not the case that Bitcoin has to be converted to US dollars, which then relies upon the central bank and the same? So like, I understand like the existence of Bitcoin itself can be like a partial solution, but because the reserve currency is the US dollar, doesn't it still fundamentally depend upon that system? And like, it's not like, we have a system where I can just go to the grocery store and pay with Bitcoin. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the case, but it seems like I would have to convert that Bitcoin into US dollars, which then relies upon the same flawed assumptions as the central bank. So is it really a solution in that sense?
So my answer to that is it is a solution and it's in our hands. So businesses are accepting Bitcoin. So you can go to Steak and Shake and you can pay with Bitcoin for your hamburger. I don't know if you're in the Northeast or whatever, there's like 750 Sheetz gas stations, convenience stores. They accept Bitcoin. So it's like,
okay,
businesses are adopting it. And it's basically, it comes down to us to say, hey, that's why I don't like people talking about Bitcoin economically, because they think it's just an investment, it's a scam, but to me, it's not about that at all. It's literally about reclaiming my human dignity, like the dignity of saying, no, you won't debase me. My work, my life's work, what I do, what I create is mine. And I'm going to interact with that and share that. And when we talk about the distribution of all the goods on the earth, it's like you are, with natural law, like you're entitled to the fruit of your work, so like what you do with your life is yours. And then as we come together socially, as we come together as a community, and like we make those bonds, like that's to me where the real like, I don't care. It's not a government's job to distribute the goods of the earth. That's on us as a people. as communities.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's picking that up to say, hey, we can do this. Like you and I can just transact in Bitcoin. I can send you Bitcoin. You can send me Bitcoin. Like, and we can go about our day. The circular economy, like we can do that. Businesses can accept it. And when you look at history, the way that these hard monies and soft monies have worked out, I can't remember the name of the principle. This English dude came up with it, but people will, they want to save the hard currency and they want to spend, the weak currency. And there gets to a point where the currency becomes so weak that people won't accept it. Like I don't. You can even think back to like in like the Phantom Menace in the Star Wars. Like Watto says, like he's trying to give him like the credits or whatever from the government, and he's like, no, I need real money. Like the money you accept as a business, like to say I'm not going to take dollars. I want Bitcoin. Like to me, when businesses make that click, that's the cascading effect for all adoption. But I fully understand that there's a transition that's gonna, like, because we live in this global reserve asset. We live in a fiat economy. And I hope that I can see this through in my life, but I fully accept that this fight might not be a my lifetime fight. Like it might take a generation. It might, but I would like to make it happen tomorrow. But I accept that it might be a little messy and longer than I would hope. But I think it is a solution if we make it a solution. Like it's in our hands. I'm not sitting around waiting for some politician to save me. This is a thing, like we have the tool, and you yourself have to make a choice. Do you want to be debased or do you not? Do you want to stand and enable this evil system, or do you want to stand against it? And for me, I mean, I'm a leader. That's why I'm here. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I'm talking to people and trying to say, listen, this is the right way. Let's go. And that's what I'm doing with my life. And I'm trying to get people to, I'm not trying to sell them on some economic calculation that if you invest in Bitcoin, you'll become rich. My whole thing is if you morally recognize what Bitcoin is, you can be free. If you morally recognize what Bitcoin is, you can protect yourself from being debased by people that you should have nothing but contempt for. So, sorry.
No, that's very good, Neal. And these are areas that I think need to be discussed. But one principle of Catholic social teaching on economics is development of peoples who are poor, and also a kind of fundamental option for the poor. So I'm wondering how Bitcoin or your economic let's say, proposals would affect the poor. Would it help people who are in poverty now escape poverty or have a better standard of living?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case, because there's a reason that the middle class is getting hollowed out, because of that Cantillon effect. Basically the only way that the monetary system functions, like the mechanics of it, if they stop printing money, if they stop expanding the monetary supply, the whole system will crash down. It's not a. They will always come up with an excuse to print more money because they have to. That's the only way to keep the charade up. But the thing is, they have to do more and more and more. So we're in this like positive feedback loop. I don't know if you've seen like one of the videos of a bridge in a positive feedback loop. It gets crazier and crazier and crazier until it snaps. It's like, well, that's what we're in. That's where we're at. So it's like you look at the debt. Oh my gosh, it's going up crazy. We're at what, 38 trillion now. It's like, but those numbers don't even mean anything. It's just all made up. It doesn't even matter. It's going to keep going up forever and ever and ever because it has to, by principle, by necessity. And what that does though is it has to scrape. It pushes more to the bottom and fewer to the top. So the few become fewer, and the more impoverished, the more there's reasons that people can't afford families. There's reasons that the birth rates are going down. There's reasons people can't save, that credit, they're living off credit, like that we have a 2-income household, because it used to be what used to be able to, you could support a family on one, when work was still tethered to the creation of money, of value. Like you could support a family, you could do all those things, but it's like that's not the case today. Now you need two, now you need three, and people still can't keep up. It's like, so when you understand that this monetary system, the enslavement of others, how could you not be poor? Okay, well, if I'm working and I can keep the fruit of my labor, I'll be okay. In an honest money system where the value I'm creating is mine and I get to keep, like that in and of itself is not only enhances my dignity, but it keeps me from being like, you're being poor because you're being debased. Like when a poor person, if they swipe their credit card, they get access, it's like 25% interest or whatever. Like that's what they're living off of. How do you escape that? How do you get out from underneath that? You don't. It's like, so it keeps pushing people down. It's like we have we don't have a middle class. We just have people with appreciating assets and people without. And the thing about the way that the monetary debasement, what that does is it basically makes the appreciating assets even like rise faster, and it just pushes down the people without those assets even further. So that's the mechanical technical reason why we have this expanding range from the top, the elites, for to the poor, the poorest of poor. Like that gap's widening because of the monetary system, because we're like the formal economic slavery. That's what is creating those conditions. So if you shield yourself from debasement, just necessarily you're going to be better off economically. You are going to be in a much better position. So that's why people in Africa, they're starting these circular economies. They can use Bitcoin too. They can transact in it. They don't need some Zimbabwe $1 trillion Happy Meal. That doesn't matter. Like they can just accept Bitcoin and the appreciate. Like I don't know. I think when you wrap your head around the actual damage that this monetary system is doing to the human person, to their dignity, to the social fabric, it just makes total sense of why we have the social issues we have today. At least in my mind, it just recognizes it as like obvious.
Michael, did you have a question or?
So, so if what you were saying is, if I understood Neal correctly, that the gap between the rich and the poor is fostered by the economic policy and the central banks, because
Yes.
and so and I like the distinction that you made with saying society. It's the responsibility of society to foster to care for people, right? To care for the vulnerable.
Charity.
The preferential option for the poor. Yes, we have the preferential option for the poor. It doesn't mean that the government has to be the one that's fulfilling that. We have the church uses the language of rights. The church says there's a right to health care. There is, but it doesn't mean that the church is in favor of socialism and that the government is the one that has to provide it. It means that there needs to be a movement on behalf of the whole of society to care for people. And the government may have a role within that. I think we have to be open to the possibility that there might be some issues that the government needs to be involved in, but there's a tendency, I think, to conflate the government and the society, and to say that because there's a need, people just assume, well, the government should fulfill that need. And what you're saying, it sounds to me, is that we have to start thinking outside of the box. We have to start thinking in terms of the society. And if there's solutions on the personal level, on the societal level, that can help us to meet needs, then we need to be open to that. I mean, one of the things that I've kind of observed with the mindset of well, the government will take care of it. You have a social program, is that it can disincentivize people from being generous.
Yeah.
because
It
people
doesn't
think,
abdicate you of your
right,
moral
right,
responsibility
because
to your
people
fellow
think,
man.
oh, well, I don't
Yeah.
need to help the homeless person that I see on the street because there's a homeless shelter down the road that's funded by the state, and the state is going to provide for them, or whatever the case is. And it's like, no, Jesus said for me to help my brother. Jesus said for me to share my wealth and the preferential option for the poor. So I have a moral responsibility to try to do what I can to help those around me and not just transition that over to the government or another entity. So I think what you're saying is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe a way of what you're saying is we need a greater like a greater discernment of conscience and a greater moral responsibility to see that we
Mm.
have a role to play as a society and we don't just sit back and wait for the government to save us, but no, we're moral agents. We've been given free will by God. We have to make choices within the society in which we live, and we have to be able to try to promote the good that we can do, and not just kind of have this victim mentality of, well, we can't do anything, it's all run by the state. We have to have more of a sense of agency and cooperation with the Lord and generosity and being able to carry out what God has called us to. I mean, is that fair? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, a lot of those exact points and principles I have in the book. I mean, it's this
Yeah.
idea that like we have to look, this I'm totally fascinated with, the part and the whole and the unity of them both. And like, yes, I am an individual, but I come from the collective. Like, we come like literally, we don't beget ourselves. It takes two people to create me, and so I come from, every human being comes from those social relations, and it's like that's the primary way that we function. And it's like it's not, we can't all or nothing it. It's like it's accepting that moral agency and understanding that yes, I am an individual and I can take care of my life and I can take care of my little tiny thing, but I'm also part of this whole. I'm a citizen, I'm part of this nation, I'm part of my community, and I care about them, and I owe them and myself a responsibility. And when I look in the mirror and I say, well, what's my role? What's my part in this oppression? Because I'm enabling it. I'm even if it's a small thing, like, oh, I'm just a little, what can I do against, this entire, global reserve currency, central bank paradigm, fiat money? Like, what can I do against it? It's like, well, yeah, I might have a small role, but it's still a role that I have to account for. And it's like, I am both oppressed and oppressor and enabling of that oppressor. Like I share both of those kind of responsibilities. And it's like, what am I going to do about it as a moral agent who can decide and choose? And I don't know. It's just but yeah, everything you were saying there is just like, it resonated so much because that's what's in the book.
Very good. Yeah, thank you, Neil. This is very helpful. I'm wondering, I sometimes hear people say that there's this World Economic Forum, or there's this small elite of very wealthy people controlling the world economy. Sometimes that strikes me as a conspiracy theory. Do you know anything about this? Because I don't have the expertise. I teach theology and I hear these things and I say, well, maybe people understand these things better than I do. So, but is there some type of, let us say, cabal or a small group of people who are really benefiting from people keeping people in debt throughout the world?
I mean, I know a little bit. I like there is an organization that's the World Economic Forum. Like those are real people, and they get together and they talk about how they want to change the world. Like I don't. One of the things I did in the book was that I don't care about intention. Like I acknowledge that maybe like there are actual people on like at the Federal Reserve. There's actual people in our government that are making policies, making decisions as moral agents to print more money or to print a little less. They're trying to get the rates just right. Like there's real people making decisions, and I don't care what their intentions are. I don't care if they're evil people trying to manipulate the world to extract all the productive energy for themselves and to become rich and powerful. If there's sinister, evil people, or they're just misguided, benevolent, they're trying to do good and trying to bring about, prosperity. It's like, it is irrelevant. I am focused on what is happening objectively. What are the effects of this monetary system? For good or ill, whatever their intention behind it is, it's damaging people, it's abusing people, and that's what I don't want to stand for. So I don't like to kind of get down the conspiracy kind of like road of it, because to me it doesn't matter. I don't need to convince you about someone's.
Yeah.
I mean, Aquinas even says, like, it's not that we're bad at judging people's interiority. We're incapable of it. All we can judge, all we're properly equipped to judge, is objective behavior. And it's like, what are the objective effects of this monetary system? Somebody hits a button, prints a bunch of money, it gets injected into the economy. What happens? Well, it just extracted all the value that people worked for their entire life and saved, and it creates this enslavement, this economic enslavement, and that is just the truth. And I'm going to shout it, and I'm going to try to convey it to people, and because I think that people, as moral agents, we recognize moral terms. I want people to recognize this like they recognize the face of their mother. If I show you a lineup, I say, which one's mom? You're not like sitting there thinking about which one's what. You say, that's my mom. And I want people to if to connect the dots in a way where they're just like, why are we doing this? Why do we let them print money? Why do we have to create the money through usury? Like, why do they have to lend it out at interest at origin? Like, that doesn't even. Why are we doing this? These are choices that we as society are making, and they're stupid. They're dumb. They are not justifiable. You can look at the logic and you say, oh, it's illogical. And you can look at, but to me, I think the moral angle is the angle, because that's what we recognize as moral agents. Like, as an Army officer, I'm thinking about strategy. It's like, so how am I presenting this message? I'm looking at the battlefield. I know my enemy. I know I want to end this enslavement. I know I want to get rid of fiat and central banking. And I have a tool. I have Bitcoin. I have this weapon, this arm, this sword and shield. It's like, how am I going to fight this battle? And it's like, I'm trying to create the greatest asymmetry between, my advantage and their disadvantage. And when it really comes down to, it's that simple question of just justify debasement. You as an individual, look at the monetary system, look at our politicians, and just ask yourself, what justification do we have to print money? You ask that question honestly. Don't stop until you have an honest answer. And for me, I can't do it. I think the truth is there is no moral justification. There is no moral justification for slavery. So I'm trying to get them. I want to fight them on make them justify enslavement, and they can't, because that's basically the only way you can justify it is going back to Socrates and Thrasymachus. It's just like the justice is just the advantage of the stronger. We're law of the jungle. Like, that's the only way you can justify what's happening here. Is just like, well, we can print the money and you have to take it, so that's why we do it. It's like, that doesn't fly for me as a Catholic. That doesn't fly for me as someone that doesn't believe in that. I completely reject might makes right. Like, that's not a convincing philosophical position for justice. So it's just like, I don't know. I dismiss that. I don't buy those justifications. But.
Yeah. Neal, can you talk in positive terms about what, so you've stated clearly the government printing more money debases all of us, right?
Yeah.
Because essentially the dollar is worth less because they've printed more of them, and there's an economic reality to that. But what would you say the role of the state is in the economy? what would be a just role for the state within the economy? What would that look like? What role does the state have within the economy?
I mean, so the state, my understanding is, I mean, what the state creates is an enforcement of equality and fairness in trade. You know, so when people are going out and doing fraud, stealing, you know, like all those any like coercive economic transaction, it's like, you know, the most primitive of all economic transactions is just me taking a stick and whacking you and taking your stuff. You know, it's like that's coercion in its most primitive form. And on the flip side of that, you know, it's just consent and persuasion, two people coming together and agreeing in trade. And it's just like, you know, when people are using coercive measures to facilitate economic exchanges, like that's the role of the state to step in for the powerless, you know, in that sense. But what's so amazing about what Bitcoin does is it just removes, it kind of separates this money from state entirely. So the only role for the state is just like actual, basically physical enforcing and like criminals. Like someone broke into my house and stole all my stuff, or broke it. Like the state's role is for, you know, pursuing those types of criminals, but they're not actually in the facilitation of economic trade. They don't even have a role anymore. Like, because it's just people consenting consensually in these economic trade. Everybody has needs, and that's why there will be economies. Like that was also the other really insightful thing that I took from my research is like Aristotle and Aquinas, they understand that economics presupposes ethics. So when you the economics is actually, or the ethics is actually what drives economic activity. So it's like when we approach this from like a purely economics kind of angle, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse, because it's like it's the ethics that makes the economy. I thought that was a really insightful thing that was powerful to me, because most you go talk to your financial advisor, he is not going to understand that principle. He's not going to understand that relation.
Yeah, I think, Neil, what happens is many people just get used to the system, and they say, well, this is the system. I go to the bank, I take money out if I have special needs. I need to get a car, I take a loan out. I need to get a mortgage on my house. I need to go. This is the way I could purchase groceries, or the appliances I need to run my household, or something like that. So people just get used to it, and then they say, well, I'm being moral because I contribute a certain amount to charities of my choice and so on. So I'm wondering, by way of conclusion, what would you want the people, like good Catholic people, to know, and what they should do about the problems that you have exposed through your book and your research? Because I think many people are just, like you've indicated, that they're just good people, and they just want to carry on with their life, and this is the system we have, this monetary system. We make the best of it, and this is reality. Then with people focus on their spiritual lives and so on, but this is just the reality of the economic system we have. But do you think there's like a moral obligation of good Catholics to take your concerns very seriously? Maybe that could be, you could kind of sum up your point that you want to make, or the points you want to make for good Catholics living today in this system.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. Like I spent like the vast majority of my life doing exactly that. I just work hard. I don't think about money. I work, I make money, I spend it on you know, food and rent, and I just go about my day. Like I didn't think about this at all you know, until recently. And it's just like so I understand. I understand that it's just not something we really want to concern ourselves with. Um, but my if I could have one thing that I want people to do is just is ask that question about why do we stand for this? Like, why do we let them print money? And the idea is like why it's important as a community, because it's like, uh, as I talk about, we can protect ourselves from debasement. Like my family, I wake up and I feel so amazing because I don't have to worry about how much money they're printing. I don't have to worry about being debased because I've come to Bitcoin. All right. I use Bitcoin as my money. Like I think in Bitcoin terms, right? I have to transact in dollars because it's the dollar, we're still in the dollar reserve currency. It's like, yeah, I understand that. I'm trying to push this transition. I'm trying to help adoption. But the thing about communities and like a church, like my family is more powerful. Like, because we talk about dignity, right? And it's like there's two types, and Dr. Edward Fazer talks about this too, and I really like it. But we have dignity in two senses. We have this universal dignity, this passive dignity, which comes from our rational faculties. The fact that we have always universally have the potential to choose right is a dignity in and of itself. But that dignity is also this. There's this activized dignity with like behaving in a dignified manner, actually living my life dignified. And it's both of those together. So it's like we all have this capacity for dignity. And it's like when you're not debased, when you're not oppressed, you're a more fully actualized human being. You are more dignified and you carry yourself as such. And I have much more to offer those around me today than I did before because I'm this upright, dignified human being. And it's like I want a community of that. I want us to grow as a community. So Catholic people talking and saying, hey, as a church, as a congregation coming together, it's like, it's not just my family, like when in a church, somebody gets cancer and they're like, oh, can we raise money for them? Well, when everybody's debased, when everybody's oppressed, you don't have anything to even give them. I don't even have time to go run and bake a casserole and drop it off for them because I'm, working my second shift after my first shift. Like, I'm spent, I'm exhausted, I'm just debased. I don't have anything to give to other people to invest in the social capital, which is the most sovereign of all wealth. So it's like when people make these switches and they can shield themselves from debasement. Hey, go back, please. When they shield themselves from debasement, you become such a more potent, fully actualized human being, and you have so much more to give, and you can create this amazing world. Like that's what I think we can do. So you start locally, you do it with your family, you talk to your neighbor. Most people don't even know their neighbors. They say hi walking by, and that's the extent of it. Like that's not how growing up, we knew neighbors. We invested time and energy in other people. It's like, well, you can reclaim that. You can pick that up by using by just shielding yourself from the debasement. And it's like, so if a church comes together and moves to a Bitcoin standard, and that entire congregation now has so much more to offer and invest in themselves, like I can't see how that's not just an amazing thing. And then other people look in and they say, what do they got going on over there? They're living the high life. They have time for each other. They're having fun. They're doing great things. Like, kind of spreads by the like attraction, like I want that. I want a good life. They seem like they got it going on. What are they doing? Oh, they just stopped being debased. That's a great idea.
Well,
Sorry, I don't know if that wrapped it up for you, but
no, but I appreciate this. This is something that I haven't considered, and I think many people haven't considered. So we're very grateful that you brought forth these considerations. Michael, do you have any final thoughts or?
I think Neal, I just want to thank you. I think you did an excellent job of explaining kind of the philosophical natural law foundation for the importance of monetary policy, because it's something that a lot of people don't think about. It's just we live our lives, we don't think about the real kind of philosophical or moral consequences of the economic system. And if we do, it's kind of like, well, this is a society as a whole, but how does it affect my family? How are we living our lives? And I think you did a really good job of connecting it with human agency and saying, okay, God created us free, and the economic system should be in service of the human person. and not not oppressing the human person, but a service to the human person. And that's really what Jesus said about the Sabbath, right? He said that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. This day of rest is supposed to help you to become the person that God created you to be. The society is supposed to be the economic system is supposed to be in service of the human person. And that seems to me your core point is that it's been reversed. It's that the human person becomes a means to serve the economic system rather than the economic system is a means to serve the human person. We've flipped it. And I think your passion and your conviction and your desire to not only speak the truth but try to live it and to conform to what it is that the Lord has put in your heart is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
And Neal, could you just again mention the title of your book and how people could purchase it?
Yeah, so the title is Modern Chains. It's on Amazon. You can go to modernchains.com. That's my website that if I do anything, I'll put it up there. Like it has all the links and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't ever want to think people have to just like this isn't like a light switch. Like understanding how kind of relearning your relationship to economics is it's a long process, and don't rush yourself. I just stay curious, ask those questions and seek answers. And if you're moving towards learning and gaining knowledge, I think that's what's really important. So.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll end with the glory be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Thank you very much, Neal, for giving your time. And we saw your little daughter. And how many children do you have?
Just two right now. We're always trying for more. So.
All right. Well, every child is a blessing. So yes. Thanks be to God, and we maybe God will bless you and your wife with more. So we hope for that. Well, you have a wonderful day. And
you too. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye now.